Been a while.
It's been a while.
Not since the beer, but since we did one of these.
I was about to say, it has been a little while. And frankly, it's because, just no new movies.
Well, I mean, work's been a little difficult on my end. And also on top of, we just haven't been able to find time, honestly. And then we had the opportunity to see it was an
early access screening of Tenet. Yeah. And you were like, I'm getting off work early. Yeah. And I was like, I don't blame you. We saw this on Monday the 31st. And
we had to, you wanted to film yesterday. I needed at least 2 days to kind of process it.
All of Nolan's movies are like that. They're always something that you really have to.
I just want to think about.
You really need to think about what you saw, because it's usually a complex plot, which this was. It was something you have to give Nolan. Where he comes up with like these ideas. He loves like time and manipulating time.
He has since Memento. That was like
even following his
it's the one I haven't seen. I haven't seen Following.
And even then, that one's like kind of told out of order. Like he's always been fascinated with manipulating time in his movies, and this is no different. I did enjoy this movie. Now, when I first saw it, I chalked it up to. Not chalked it up, but I was like,
was the first time we've been in a theater in a while.
Was some of it going to the theater?
Yeah.
And I don't think it was. I truly do. I really, really did enjoy this movie. The reason I'm kind of not super excited, it's in the scheme of movies, this is a great movie. This is good. But it's like for Nolan, I kind of hold him to such a high standard that it's like this is one of his weaker films.
It's one of it. Man, what are you doing?
Just stuff.
Moving the blanket that we put up on. In terms of, I guess in terms of Nolan's films, for me it's middle of the road. I really like a lot of his movies. I'm pretty open about when we did the Dark Knight trilogy. And I said, I feel like all three of those are the three best. Like, if you were ranking superhero movies, those are the three best superhero movies.
1 and 2 for sure. I've told you, 3 I'm a little indifferent.
Every time I've watched the third, I've liked it more.
I know. Oh, I know. Because we've had this conversation a lot.
It goes, Inception, I think, is definitely in top 5 movie of the past decade.
I told you that's my number 1 Nolan film. And
that's also probably mine too. But then you have Memento, and the first time you see Memento, you're like, much kind of like Inception, the rewatchability of his movies aren't great.
No, it's all
besides the Dark Knight trilogy, which I could watch all the time. And Dunkirk's not bad, but
Dunkirk's amazing. I think Dunkirk's.
I'm talking about in terms of rewatchability.
Oh, I disagree. I can rewatch that shit all the time.
I cannot rewatch it all the time. That's an intense ride that you were from beginning to end.
It's great.
But then back to this movie. Yeah. This movie to me is. I know you really like Interstellar. I really like Interstellar. If I had watched them both, I'd grade them similarly. But that said, I think I like this a little bit more than Interstellar, story-wise. I like the concept of espionage.
Yeah, it's a spy thriller.
Yeah, it's this espionage spy thriller where you realize that it's not just things moving backwards. It's time. People have come back in time.
There's
somebody in the future is trying to end the world today. Is basically the plot.
Well, yes and no, because remember the whole, and we are probably going to have to get into some spoiler territory, just to let y'all know. But what you figure out is like they've hidden these pieces of they call it an algorithm, but it's essentially something that would invert time of the Earth to prevent, I think they said climate change or something, or global warming. Like that was the goal of the people in the future. But they sent all this stuff back to a gentleman who was Kenneth Branagh, and Kenneth Branagh basically starts to get like a god complex. And that's where it becomes that when you figure all of that out, that's where the movie starts to get fun. Because up until that point, it is a true spy espionage thriller, and not like James Bond. It's like a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It's where you're not
for the first hour and 20 minutes, and I'm someone who has never had an issue following movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, you hear people like had struggled with like The Matrix, and you hear people in Inception and stuff where you're just like, I don't know, I'm not following. I've never had that issue. This movie's weird in the sense that you get about an hour and a half in, and I have caught everything.
No, it's one of those things.
I still don't quite know what's going on.
That's exactly it. It's not that it's necessarily hard to follow. You understand what's going on, but it's really like, why?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? And honestly, to give you all a heads up, the moment Aaron Taylor Johnson is introduced, he's a part of this like crew. The moment he's introduced, that's where things start to get explained as to why these things are happening and what is truly going on, and that's when the movie gets extremely fun. Mm-hmm. And the last hour of this movie, I would put on par with like the rest of his movies, but it takes a while to get there.
Yeah, it does. You feel much like John David Washington's character, and it's told from that point of view, and he's trying to figure it out. And John David Washington.
Oh, he's baby Denzel. I mean, he's great.
He's really good.
He's really good.
And I like Robert Pattinson.
I thought all the performances were good. And this is another knock on Nolan, some of the characters' motivations and some of their...
Are we going to hop right into this?
No. Well, yes and no. So and kind of the way... For how high a stakes some things are, John David Washington really kind of like brushes off certain things. And you're like, you should be... Because he's being introduced to something it's hard to conceive. Mm-hmm. So you would think there's a little bit more like, what, you know, like...
That said, you know, in the line of work, I mean, he was CIA spy.
He was already CIA.
Well, yes. You could tell, and that was kind of supposed to be from the beginning, was that... I'm sure they're introduced. I mean, probably nothing quite like this, but I'm sure
he's seen some shit.
They see some shit, and they are introduced to some things where they just have to just roll with it because they're like, "This is happening. They've got their mission.
I have a mission," and that is true. And that when you put it that way.
I didn't have an issue with that.
The first half of the movie, though, is that it is just like it almost felt like he was doing this just to do it. You know, it wasn't like there was a mission.
My complaint about this movie has nothing to do with I mentioned like the first hour and a half where you feel like that's just part of the movie. That's part of the story. That's
what I'm saying. I'm comparing it to like those older espionage stories where it's like terminology and things. Yeah.
Your comment of motivation behind things. Like you said, there are times, John David, where not the people are at stake or, 10, 15, like humanity. It's been clearly laid out what's happening in humanity as a whole. Not like the ongoing of the human race. Yes. Humanity is possibly
not a nation, not like a city, like literally the world.
Yeah, is hanging in the balance here
of one guy.
Yeah, and everybody, including him, everybody that is trying to stop it fully is aware of this. And at one point, Elizabeth Debicki, she is introduced to this, and they kind of, because she's so close.
She is Kenneth Branagh's wife.
Yes,
but it's a loveless marriage, and he's
basically holding her captive.
Yeah, with her son as like a bargaining chip, I guess. Yeah. And when I say motivations,
there are times where John David Washington too, where they throw humanity to the wind
to save
everything. Like, there are times, especially with Elizabeth Debicki, there are where they're talking about saving humanity, and she goes,
"What about my son?
What about my son?"
And this is sad because I've never done that with a Nolan movie. I turned to you and laughed. I was like, "What? What is she thinking?" Like, don't get me wrong. It's a mother's love. You can't. Nothing is going to be bigger than loving your son.
At that particular moment in time,
Pattinson just said.
Yeah.
He just said. The weight of the world is at stake. And she goes, "Even my son?" And it was like, yeah! The whole world! And
everyone!
And I was like, and see, it was that sort of and John David Washington, too, seems very caught up on helping out Elizabeth Debicki, and there's not a love story there, and there are times, and they're not close, it's just like, but in that point, it's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you feel bad for her, but at a certain point, it's like, you don't know her. You know? And that was something that it kind of bugged me. That did make me mad. But besides that, we do
the rest of this movie.
We do need to get into the set pieces, the action set pieces. The whole inverted fight scene where they're at the airport. I don't know how they filmed it. I've thought about it. I truly do not know. Like, because one guy's going forward in motion, the other guy's going backwards.
Well, I'm assuming he filmed it twice, right?
Yeah, but no, I would say no, because, and I definitely will watch behind the scenes of how they do it, because you could say they filmed it twice, but then at the same time, it's like the second time would the other person be moving backwards? Because no matter what, one person's moving forwards and the other person's moving backwards. That was it is something, and that's what I love about Nolan's movies.
I would assume what happened is nobody's moving backwards. They filmed it one way and then green suited somebody up so that it seems like they're.
I don't think so, man. Like and honestly, it might be that, but that's why I will definitely watch behind the scenes just to see like how.
It's an entertaining ride. Again, that is a minor gripe because it happens only like 2 or 3 times in terms of the
motivations
of characters.
They're weak. Yeah,
they're weak, and it does come up, but it only happens
a couple of times throughout the movie.
And the rest of the movie is you sit there and go, how does he
conceive this shit?
Yeah,
you know, and it's
original. You walk out of that theater and you're like, I just saw something.
That's what I love about. I was about to say that. He did it with Interstellar. He did it with Inception, and even in the superhero movies, he did shit that superhero movies had never done before. But in particular, Inception and Interstellar.
I mean, even in the Prestige, man.
No, that's true.
But in Prestige, you walked out of that and you're like, well, whoa.
But this, I'm talking in particular, Interstellar and Inception and Tenet. He has these like scenes that he has thought up in his mind, where you're like, I've never seen this put on screen.
Yeah.
And because of that, you're just transfixed and amazed, and it's just the enjoyment of going to the movies and watching movies, but it is awesome. Mm-hmm. And that was walking out, like my mind, when I saw Inception, my mind was literally blown. Mm-hmm. Like I could barely drive home. And
no, you didn't drive.
I didn't drive home. You drove home. And then, but with with Tenet, I was still like...
No, your reaction to the movies, well, not quite this. Inception's a movie you see, you go, whoa!
Yeah.
Like you're just like, oh my god.
But
this, you don't have that same type of feeling walking out of this, but you do feel like you walk out and you're like, well, that was unique.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun. It was original. And another thing I'll say, I walked out of this, I had an opinion of it, then my opinion kind of lessened a bit, like when I was going to bed that night. But that night I was watching Game 6 of Houston OKC, and an ad came up for Tenet.
Yeah.
And of course in the ad they're showing snippets of reviews and stuff. And one review said, it's like James Bond on acid. Now, while I kind of disagree with that as a statement, I do then start looking at it that way, was like, this is the Bond movie Nolan wanted to make. Mm-hmm. If Nolan could have made a Bond movie, this would be it. And then in that perspective, I was like,
that's another
awesome.
thing too.
That was something that makes sense.
Because this is a far out concept that he brought into modern day. This isn't like taking place in the future.
No.
This is taking place right now.
It's supposed to be taking place now.
Yeah. And it's really cool to think like. I had to like keep reminding myself of that. Like this isn't a futuristic movie. This is right now. This is as if a spy right now was
Inception was the same way.
Yeah. Inception was a little. I always took that it was a little bit further on. They had developed the technology to put people to sleep
in this case they're
dream state.
Okay, yeah, but in this case there's someone from the future who's brought back. Anyway, I really enjoyed this movie. One minor gripe when I say like because in Inception. And I hate to compare this movie to another movie. It's a completely different movie.
I think there was a rumor at one point that these movies are connected.
I just don't think...
These movies are not connected.
But what I was going to say, in those movies, in Inception and in Tenet, he builds these worlds, and it's complex, and it's fascinating. And the difference between Inception and here, and in Tenet, there is almost zero to little character development. You don't really figure out who these people are. It's very similar to Dunkirk in that way. But Dunkirk, it works because it's like these are just guys at war. Mm-hmm. And in this, it's like you kind of want to know a little bit.
And that is
in Inception, when you rewatch it, or if you obviously caught it the first time, there is a tragic love story.
Yeah, no.
And you develop this character of Cobb.
Well, no, Inception, the character development, the whole movie's character development.
But
in this though. And that's part of the reason I said, it was one of the first things I asked you. I said, is this like it seems like this was the beginning point.
Put it this way.
Of a
series
of movies.
That being said, if he was doing that, I don't see him making another. I don't see maybe if he was wanted to produce a sequel because they end off the way it ends is something where
it's got a good ending.
I enjoyed the ending a lot.
Yeah,
they could make a continuation of, and when you watch it, you'll understand when I say they could continue this story. But I took it as like, no, that's up to your imagination. Like that's up for you to decide. Like, oh, what else were they getting up to?
Yeah,
in his future or in the past. And it's awesome. But that being said, I think this is like the final movie.
I'm not 100% sold on that. I mean, you say that. I mean, he did do the Dark Knight trilogy.
But that's different because those are characters that had already been established. He could just pick and choose who he wanted to do. With this, he still has to create a whole new story.
Well, that's what my point is. Like, it sets it up as if he's got more to the story.
I would welcome it a lot because that was.
It was kind of like this is one adventure of the many adventures.
Mm-hmm. It did feel that way. And that's what I mean. Like he could make a sequel.
Yeah.
I don't think he.
And I don't know if he will make the sequel.
But then at that point, I honestly don't. I don't know if I want to watch it. It depends if they got someone good. But it's like
I'm sure he'd produce it. Everybody needs cash.
Yeah. Oh well, no. He's big time. He's all about making cash. There's a reason he was like, this shit is not going to video on demand. It's going in the theaters. I don't care how many people die or get sick. But yeah, I enjoyed this movie. It's somewhat disappointing for a Nolan movie, but then I really had to think about like, this was still super fun, and I enjoyed it.
There was one piece to it, and this is nitpick. A lot of the stuff we're complaining about is so small in the grand scheme.
It's a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah. It's a moment of editing, and I
think that was just.
Well, no, it's still whether you say it's different points in time or different.
I don't think it was different points.
No, I mean like the conversation that's had between Pattinson and John. There's a moment where they're all in a cargo container and they're driving to a location. And there's conversation had, and I think the perceived notion was this
takes place over like a week.
No, well,
a couple days.
They were in a cargo container going from one place to another. I would assume a couple days. But the way it's edited is both characters are in their same spots, but Pattinson is either laying down or sitting up, and every time it cuts. He's in a different position, and it is weird.
See, well, that's where I think that was just poor editing.
That's what I just said.
Yeah. Well then. Yeah. Okay.
That's what.
Sorry.
That was my complaint. I don't. As I thought about it, I was like, no, it just took place over a period of time. Because I remember watching it, going, this is weird. Are they here multiple times? Like I thought, all of a sudden they're going to introduce 2 timelines, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Which at that point in time, you had like just figured everything out, and there was a relief, and then I thought, oh my god.
He was like, all right, I'll let you breathe for 5 seconds, and now you got to learn something else. No, but every movie's gonna have a moment kind of like that, you know. Not every movie, but a lot of movies do.
To me, this stood out. Like to me, this was a noticeable moment.
So, yeah, I didn't notice it. I didn't know. You brought it up to me. I was like, oh, I guess I didn't.
Like it kind of bugged when I was in the car. When I was leaving. Mm-hmm. And specifically while it was happening, I was like, what am I watching? And the worst part about it is it seems like the conversations are kind of connected. Like they're talking about the same subject.
But I think it's kind of supposed to be that. That's why I thought it took place. I thought it was one conversation, that it was just poor editing.
Okay, well, it could have been that too.
That's what I perceived. But besides like stuff like that, one last thing. I read online talking about how the audio mixing is poor. All of Nolan's movies are like that. When you watch them... Now, for me, I can understand 99% of the
only time I had an issue understanding anything was in the middle of battle, and they were screaming. I felt like it was meant to be that way.
And see, it goes to my thing where...
There was nothing important
It was poor audio mixing, but it didn't, for me, detract from like me hating the movie. You know, it didn't make me like.
I didn't feel like I missed anything.
I told you there were a few parts. There's the part when they're on the boat and they're talking on the microphone. You can barely understand.
I made out everything, but yes, that is difficult to hear.
So there's certain points where again, the sound and the score is so loud.
And I also thought that was really cool.
What?
The talking on the boat.
Yeah.
They're sailing and they've got on headsets, and it's not like in Fast and the Furious where they're talking across
through cars, going 180 and having silent conversations. But that being said,
they've got on headsets on this boat. There's a ton of noise happening, and they're speaking over headset, and you get the microphone feed.
Yeah, you get the microphone feed. I see again. It is poor audio mixing, but it's not enough for me to hate the movie. That part I thought was cool. But the score, it wasn't Hans Zimmer. But the guy, Ludwig Göransson, he's like Childish Gambino's main producer.
In the car, and that sound is playing, where it sounds like it's in revert.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, that's a cool sound.
Dude, he was killer. Like I do wonder what Hans Zimmer would have done, but no, this guy he crushed. He did a really good job. For me, I give this the more I've actually. And it does go back to, it's just a new movie. It's something that I've really enjoyed it. I think I am going to give this an A-, close to B+. Like it's definitely not. It's one of his weaker films, but it's nuts that it's like A-.
Again, I think in the aspect of the complaints I had are more complaints than I've had in any other Nolan movie. Mm-hmm. Like those things, and it's because you hold Nolan to such a high standard. You watch his stuff, and as we knew we were going to do this going in, so I'm watching movies on what am I, like, what are things I'm kind of, as somebody that the average moviegoer is going to go watch it, probably have no issues with anything that takes place, because it's not, in terms of the grand scheme of, and if you compare it to an action film, popcorn flick now, the idea that somebody's worried about their family opposed to humanity, like that's not that big a deal. And the poor editing of people sitting up and laying down, that's nothing. But that's just stuff I noticed while I was watching this, going, this is a Nolan film.
Yeah.
That said, after the idea of this, and I like the spy espionage thing.
It's cool.
I like the fact that throughout the whole thing, I was fixated on trying to figure it out.
Well, he does that. All his movies are kind of like that, where it's like you're trying to figure out stuff, which I kind of enjoy about Nolan.
And this pulls all that off, and I really like it. It's an A-.
A-? Okay.
It's an A-. It's great. It's Nolan.
Yeah,
you watch it.
I was just excited to see another Nolan film. There's no question. As far as I would recommend going to see it, our theater was pretty. It seemed somewhat safe. Like I know ours theater was.
Everybody had on a mask. They only allowed 20%.
I think it was 40.
40%.
Like there was,
and we weren't near. We had people like 4 seats over that way.
Yeah, like it was.
2 rows
it
up.
felt fairly safe as long as you go and mask up and just be, a good Samaritan. I think you'll be perfectly fine. But yeah, I would definitely recommend going to see it, and it's a Nolan film, so you should see it on the biggest, loudest screen as possible.
There are moments in this movie that are extremely loud too.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about with people talking.
The theater you could hear it rattle.
Yeah.
Like after the sound went away, you could hear the rafters basically like rattling. But yeah. You got anything else? Yeah, I think we pretty much, and we tried to stay spoiler free for the most part. But if we went anything, if you see it and you think we ruined anything, we do apologize. So
I don't think so. I think the biggest thing we ruined that is it's ultimately there's a time travel aspect which you don't really know going in, and you don't really truly find out how much the time travel aspect is involved until halfway through.
The moment that scene happens where
the moment you realize people are just manipulating time,
that's where you're like
at will.
You're like the movie gets so fun at that point. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll catch you next time.